Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
I fell in love, hard. Kody, the victim from Sister Wives, plays the role again. Was the family destroyed by his love? Despite his sometimes negative reputation, Sister Wives star Kody Brown has a tender side. In fact, during the most recent tell-all preview, he revealed that his feelings for Robin were so strong that they caught him off guard. It seemed as though he was playing the violin once more. Kody has engaged in self-pity on occasion, but who hasn't? The point is that he might be trying to sway others by telling a tearful tale about his great love. If this is the case, his remarks might be more about constructing a story than they are about revealing a significant reality about his life. He might, however, be being genuinely honest in his opening up. If that's the case, that's great. Kody is fully conscious of the destruction caused by preferring one wife, Robin. He has suffered a great deal, and he firmly feels that his family was ruined by his uncontrollable love. Perhaps Kody didn't love the other wives. Perhaps Kody didn't understand what it was like to truly love his ex-partners, Mary, Janelle, and Christine Brown, even if he may have believed he did. His feelings for Robin were far more intense than his sentiments for the other. He seemed to be walking on air as soon as he began wooing her. With all of its euphoric bliss, this was love. Kody started acting completely different. All of a sudden, he was only thinking about Robin. At first, it might have appeared to be a crush, something passionate that isn't meant to last, but it was much more than that. Kody may have never felt that way about anyone else in his life. In another universe, this would be ideal. Chemistry so strong that it simply takes over and unites two individuals. The fact that 3 other wives also desired a husband, however, presented a serious issue. Kody was really unlucky to be in this predicament because it would be difficult to untangle himself. As a husband of 3, and later 4, once he married Robin, he was overburdened. Another obstacle that prevented him from truly pursuing his dreams was the children he had from those moms. When he was the man of the house, driving the body and the family's lifeblood, it would take the most delicate surgery to free himself. Regretfully, his hands lacked the dexterity necessary to carry out the procedure without experiencing major issues. Kody most likely felt really depressed. Maybe he waited too long. See Janelle hit her breaking point above? That's what all the ex-wives did. Since he believed he should remain with the woman he didn't love, Kody most likely had the greatest of intentions. He isn't a villain because of that. They ought to have released him. All of the former spouses in that marriage are now adults, and they are all accountable for ignoring the truth. It's also unfair to portray the ex-partners as angels and villainize Kody. They were aware of what was going on, and maybe their unromantic decisions were motivated by a need for financial stability. Though there were other worries, feelings were genuine. It was like a keg of powder. The practical and the sentimental are at odds in this situation, and the prolonged multiple marriage was most likely the result of practical demands taking precedence. However, a person's innermost feelings, the ones that motivate them, cannot be repressed, they always surface in some form. Thus, Robin's passive aggression, arguments, and an overall mood of sadness were all based on the delusion that everything was normal, even though everyone knew it was essentially a fake. In order to be felt and understood, emotions require a secure place to be expressed. Kody adored Robin, so they were. However, the other women had to face their emotional struggles alone. Kody likely questioned why they couldn't simply leave, but he also had to deal with the shame of being the one who refused them. He had to start it, but why? He actually waited in an attempt to persuade them to do the action that he refused to. They eventually did, but once more, it lasted much too long, and the negative recollections cast ominous shadows. We can only hope that everyone is old enough to move past this chaos. They ought to be. The separations were emotionally taxing. Breaking those ties was ultimately a difficult and frightening process. How could things have changed so drastically when there were so many shattered hearts, so much resentment, and a feeling of unreality? What would everyone's lives be like if the most well-known poly family in America broke up? For starters, there was a lot of money at risk. Sister Wives makes a lot of money. Then came the ex-wives, who had to start over in their middle years. Children who were left out of Robin's core family with Kody then had to endure the atrocities of a dysfunctional household. Kody's perspective should be taken into account. It's not only about the ex-wives, his story is important. Men too have sentiments, a lot of them, which society frequently encourages them to keep hidden. There they remain, throbbing beneath the surface. Kody, convinced it was the correct thing to do, jumped into polygamy. He was led to believe it by others. These kinds of events, turning points that shift the terrain and even appear to permanently alter the universe, occur in every life. For Kody, it was love before Garrison's death. And that ought to be advantageous. But there were simply too many problems. He was unable to love Robin without restriction. In the preview, he stated, "This was so truthful. The simplicity of it speaks for itself." Although he might have been playing the victim, it's more probable that he feels obliged to say this because it's true. He wants to be understood by others. Everyone desires to be understood. The sister wives. Perhaps Kody Brown is correct when he says that polygamy cannot flourish following a traumatic experience like as falling deeply in love with one wife. It has to do with how individuals act. Kody was unable to follow the procedures. He wanted the fairy tale with Robin, but he was too romantic. So perhaps he should be given some leeway. He simply was unable to convince the other women, and perhaps that is a sign of a decent heart. It was impossible to fake love. Enough may have been said by the other women, but the sister women stars decided to stay. All of them were adults who understood the situation. It could be time for the Browns to put their animosity aside now that Kody is making an effort to patch things up with his ex-partners by giving Meri and Janelle bigger shares in Coyote Pass before it is sold. People should remain with the people they love and leave others alone because life is too short for this. Kody Brown, more than a villain? Let's begin by establishing something important. Kody Brown is not a monster. He is, at his core, a human being trying to reconcile deep personal feelings with an incredibly complex family structure. Yes, he often makes poor choices, says the wrong things, and comes off as self-centered. But he's also someone who, by his own admission, fell in love in a way that changed him completely. That can happen to anyone. When he met Robin, everything shifted, not just for him, but for every member of his plural family. It's easy to dismiss Kody's love story as a betrayal, especially when viewed through the lens of the ex-wives, Meri, Christine, and Janelle. But it's more complicated than that. Kody's intense emotional attachment to Robin may have been the trigger that started the family unraveling, but perhaps it wasn't the real cause. Perhaps the roots of this collapse were sown long before Robin entered the picture. The idea that Kody never really loved his other wives. This might be hard to hear for fans of Christine, Janelle, and Meri, but there's a growing theory that Kody didn't really love his first 3 wives the way he loved Robin. While he may have believed he did at the time, the experience of falling for Robin seemed to open his eyes to what real love could feel like. He floated when she was near. He was giddy, inspired, alive. Watching the show, it became apparent that Kody had a different kind of connection with Robin. His demeanor changed. He became softer, more attentive, more engaged, something viewers rarely saw with his other wives. This love wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and all-consuming. If this is true, it means the foundation of the Brown family was built on unequal emotional stakes from the beginning. That's not a recipe for long-term harmony in any relationship, let alone a plural one. The tragedy of timing and responsibility. One of the major challenges Kody faced was the timing of his realization. He didn't fall for Robin when he was a single man. He fell for her as a father of 13 and a husband to 3. The burden of duty, tradition, and religion weighed heavily on him. For years, he tried to serve the entire family equally, hosting rotating schedules, participating in endless one-on-one conversations, and putting up a front of balance. But deep down, his heart wasn't in it anymore. It wasn't as simple as waking up one day and deciding to leave. Kody knew walking away would devastate the wives he shared decades of history with. Not to mention the children, who were always the glue holding everything together. He was torn, living a life that no longer reflected his truth, but also unable to extricate himself from the web he'd helped weave. This internal battle led to emotional constipation. His frustrations mounted, which turned into anger, blame, and ultimately, apathy. He didn't want to be the villain. So he waited. He let his wives make the first moves, until Christine finally left. Then Janelle. Then Mary. And Kody, perhaps relieved, perhaps heartbroken, simply stayed with Robin, the one woman he still deeply loved. The self-pity narrative. In his tell-all moment, Kody's confession didn't land well with everyone. Viewers accused him of playing the victim, using his love for Robin as a shield against criticism. "I fell in love, hard," he said with a twinge of melancholy, as though love was something that happened to him, rather than something he chose. And maybe that's how he sees it, an unstoppable force that changed his path whether he wanted it to or not. To his critics, this sounds like classic emotional manipulation. A sob story. A way to spin his favoritism and abandonment of his other wives into something romantic and noble. But to others, it's a rare display of honesty from a man who often hides behind bravado. Could Kody be using this love story to rewrite the narrative? Absolutely. Could he also be telling a truth that is painful and complex? Just as likely. A romance that came at too high a cost. In an ideal world, Kody and Robin would have found each other under different circumstances. If Kody had been single when they met, their love story might have been inspiring. But because it unfolded within the confines of an already struggling plural marriage, their bond felt like betrayal. Christine, Janelle, and Mary watched as Kody emotionally checked out. The affection, the time, the energy, all went to Robin. This shift destroyed the family dynamic. The other wives didn't just lose a partner, they lost the illusion of equality. Once favoritism entered the picture, resentment grew. What followed was a series of increasingly dramatic confrontations, emotionally charged episodes, and finally, a string of separations. This wasn't just about love. It was about fairness, respect, and dignity. And when those things disappeared, the wives did too. Emotional fallout, the wives' side of the story. The aftermath of Kody's revelation had devastating consequences. Christine was the first to walk away, citing years of neglect and emotional starvation. Janelle followed, tired of the chaos and unwilling to be a background character in Kody and Robin's love story. Mary held on the longest, perhaps out of loyalty or fear, but even she eventually acknowledged that the relationship was over. Each wife had to start over in midlife, emotionally bruised and publicly humiliated. They had to rebuild their identities, redefine their futures, and learn how to stand alone after years of being part of a unit. For the children, the experience was equally jarring. Many became estranged from Kody, seeing him as having abandoned their mothers. The family that had once presented itself as unified and loving was now broken into bitter, disconnected factions. Could this have been avoided? This is the million-dollar question. Could Kody have handled things differently? Could the wives? Probably. In hindsight, many of the warning signs were there. The marriage was uneven long before Robin arrived. The cracks were simply papered over by shared faith, financial incentives, and a desire to appear whole on television. Had Kody acknowledged his shifting emotions earlier, perhaps in private and with sincerity, things might have been less explosive. Had the wives felt empowered to voice their dissatisfaction without fear of judgment or loss, maybe the family could have transitioned more gracefully. But that didn't happen. Instead, emotions were buried, resentment festered, and the eventual collapse was spectacular. Is Kody playing the victim, or is he just human? Let's return to Kody's recent confession. "I fell in love, hard." It's both a justification and a cry for understanding. On one hand, it's a way of excusing his behavior, of saying, this wasn't a choice. It was fate. On the other hand, it's also a profound admission of emotional truth. Perhaps the real issue isn't that Kody loved Robin, it's that he didn't know how to manage that love while maintaining his commitments. He was caught between what he felt and what he was supposed to be. That doesn't excuse the hurt he caused, but it does explain it. Love is messy. It disrupts, it complicates, and sometimes, it destroys. Kody's story is one of a man trying to live according to a system that wasn't suited to the kind of love he eventually discovered. In the end, maybe he wasn't built for polygamy after all. Where does the family go from here? Now that the dust has settled, where does the Brown family go from here? Kody remains with Robyn, who seems both his refuge and his anchor.